Oh man, I love this song. Coming up, the story of a groovy, feel-good rock and roll classic. I mean, despite the song's tremendous enduring success, the legend behind it, he didn't feel good about anything to do with the song. This artist made a terrible deal. He received no royalties, and he had to beg the Unscrupulous record label for a little money just to survive even. Then there was the simple fact that this critically acclaimed artist just flat out hated the song, even though history has deemed it his signature tune. One of the greatest classic songs ever. The rest of the human race just loves it. As they say in the music business, a hit is a hit is a hit, even if the artist that created it doesn't want it to be. We cast some memories and reveal the honest truth. Coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time, especially today. You know, if you remember trying to pull your Stretch Armstrong toy apart back in the day, you're gonna dig this channel of pure musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now, click the big red button, check the notifications so that you always get our new interviews and stories. I remember pulling mine all the way apart. I had a Hulk one. Also become a part of our mission on Patreon to help us remember these classics and check out our merch below. All right, it's time to induct another all-time great into the new standards. This is the show that honors songs that transcend genre, fads, generations, songs that have become the soundtrack of our lives regardless of our age or the century even. One of the highest honors that can be bestowed upon a citizen of the United Kingdom is knighthood. As an elite company in the musical artist category for those who have received that exaltation. I'm referring to Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger, Rod Stewart, Elton John, Bob Geldof has gotten it, Ray Davies, and Bono, along with producer extraordinaire George Martin also got it. And in 2016, Van Morrison joined that prestigious list when Queen Elizabeth II anointed him as Sir George Ivan Morrison for his contributions to popular music and tourism in Northern Ireland.
Sir Ivan Morrison, for services to the music industry.
Nearly 50 years before receiving that historic honor, Van Morrison was far from Buckingham Palace, about as far as you could be. He was a destitute artist struggling to regain control of his career. This is back in 1967. Van had just exited from them, a group he co-founded, and embarked on a solo career from there. He was talked into making a horrible business decision, and he entered into a contract with a new label where he was cheated out of being paid any royalties. At the same time, his first solo single was an absolute smash, sold over 2 million copies, but he was much too angry and much too poor to enjoy this. The single that I'm talking about, the feel-good classic, Brown Eyed Girl. Now, Van Morrison hails from Belfast, Ireland. His mother was a former professional tap dancer, and his father was an electrician by trade, who had the largest collection of records in all of Northern Ireland, I might add. Because of his dad's vast collection, Van Morrison grew up on many of the all-time luminaries of recorded music. There was Hank Williams, Muddy Waters, Leadbelly, Ray Charles, and Solomon Burke, to name a few. The last two perhaps the most impressionable on this Irish lad. When Van turned 11, he began to play a variety of instruments. There was the guitar, the harmonica, and the tenor sax as well. After cutting his teeth with several bands, Van responded to an advertisement in a newspaper about joining some other musicians to play R&B at a club inside the Maritime Hotel in Belfast. Now, first they went by the name The Gamblers, and then they had to brainstorm to change the band name, and it became Them in '64, taking the title from the 50s American black and white sci-fi monster flick with the same name.
So hideous, there is no word to describe them.
The classic original lineup for Them consisted of Van Morrison, Alan Henderson, Ronnie Milling, Billy Harrison, and Thin Lizzy founding member Eric Rickson. With Van Morrison as the front man, it didn't take long for Them to take off. In late '64 and '65, just a year after their formation, Them burst onto the British music scene with consecutive top 10 hits in the UK. First it was Please Don't Go, featured rhythm guitar licks and a doubled bass riff by Zeppelin's Jimmy Page, actually. He was a guest session man on that recording. That was followed by the group's highest charting single, Here Comes the Night. That climbed to #2 in the UK and Ireland. It was their lone single to make the Billboard Hot 100 here in the US, peaking at #24.
Here comes the night.
Them's biggest achievement, however, was the eventual international success of Gloria, the B-side to Baby Please Don't Go. Of course, Gloria has become one of the most influential garage rock songs of all time, and it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999. Huge song. Them began to trend at the perfect time in the United States. It was the mid-60s. The British invasion, it was in full effect, and the AM radio success of Here Comes the Night, combined with the cult fascination with Gloria, led them to being signed by a residency of concerts at the Whiskey A Go-Go on LA's famed Sunset Strip. This was in the summer of 1966. One of the bands that was greatly influenced by Van Morrison and them was The Doors. Of course, fronted by another Morrison of no relation to Van. Van's influence on The Doors frontman Jim Morrison. This was instantaneous. It was Van's reckless abandon and repressed danger that grabbed Jim Morrison. According to Doors drummer John Densmore, Jim was just captivated by the way Van would improvise poetry to the beat of a song on stage and Van's propensity to slither like a serpent during instrumental breaks. Perhaps the inspiration behind The Lizard King. The Doors opened for them at the Whiskey for the last week of their residency in LA, and on the last night of the run of engagements, the two bands jammed on stage together, performing a 20-minute rendition of Gloria. Now, after a dispute about money erupted while the band was playing in Hawaii, the unity of them as a rock group, it unraveled into 5 disgruntled individuals in early 1967. 2 of the members stayed in the US, and by the time the other 3 made it back home to Ireland, this band was done. Morrison summarized the breakup of them, stating that everyone involved in the group just got twisted, and the dissolution was unavoidable. It was time for Morrison to go solo. So Bert Burns, who wrote them's hit Here Comes the Night, created a record label in 1965. He called it Bang. This represented the first initials of his partners, Bert, Ahmet, the legendary Ahmet Ertegun. There was Ahmet's brother, Nasuhi, and Jerry Wexler, the record man that invented the expression rhythm and blues. His name was actually Gerald. That was where the G came from. Knowing that Morrison was vulnerable and without a plan, Burns convinced him to sign with Bang. And Van naively entered into a terrible contract, which only paid him $2,500 and no royalties. The contract also charged Van for any studio time and expenses related to recording his music. I mean, it was a crap deal that any attorney would have shredded, but Van made the mistake of not seeking legal counsel like many artists back then. That decision would come back to haunt him. Now, as we continue to break down this song, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I always wear. You know, what I love most about Zenni Eyewear, besides their low price, is their variety. Right now, I'm really loving their migraine relief glasses, blending therapeutic relief and fashionable style for pain-free days. Tailored comfort and therapeutic relief to restore your senses. Make sure to click on the info button right up here or the link below to get our special POR prices on all frames, up to 80% off.
And whatever happened?
So Van Morrison agreed to fly to New York City and record some songs that he was working on for Burns and Bang Records. One of those songs was an effusive, wistful love song the band started writing in early '67. A song full of frolic and nostalgia, originally titled Brown Skin Girl. That was inadvertently changed in the studio to Brown Eyed Girl.
Sliding all along the waterfall with you.
Now, Van admitted that changing the title of the song was a mistake. He claims that it just slipped his mind. Van elaborated on the switch that after they recorded the track, he looked at the tape box and didn't even notice that he had changed the title. Now, the box that was placed next to his guitar clearly read Brown Eyed Girl. Van just chalked it up as just one of those things that happen.
We used to sing sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la.
Brown Eyed Girl, that was brought to life as a Jamaican-flavored song with a calypso vibe. As producer of the track, Burns liked the idea for the song to have a calypso feel because he had spent some time in Cuba recording songs with maracas and a string instrument called a cuatro. Latin-induced pop music is just his kind of thing. That groovy, cheerful guitar riff on Brown Eyed Girl, that gave the song a tropical flashback effect. That was performed by Al Gorgoni, a highly sought-after session musician at that time. Burns also recruited the late Eric Gell and veteran Hugh McCracken on rhythm guitar. All three of these guitarists were the best in the business at that time, playing on dozens of chart-busting singles in the 60s. The featured support vocals on Brown Eyed Girl, those were delivered by Sweet Inspirations. This was an American R&B singing group founded by Dionne Warwick, who was later replaced by her aunt Cissy Houston, Whitney Houston's mom. So singing on Brown Eyed Girl was Cissy Houston, Myrna Smith, Estelle Brown, and Sylvia Shemwell, the lineup that comprised Sweet Inspirations through much of the 60s. Like the guitar trio of Gorgoni, Gale, and McCracken, Sweet Inspirations were also in high demand during this era. Their gifted backup harmonies to many recordings in the 60s performed for some of the biggest names on the R&B scene. There was Aretha on one of her greatest songs, Chain of Fools, along with songs by Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, The Drifters, and Lou Rawls, just to name a few. So the foursome also sang on Dionne Warwick's Say a Little Prayer that came out in '67, one of the many hit songs that the super duo of Burt Bacharach and Hal David composed for Dionne to sing.
I say a little prayer for you.
In 1969 and '70, Sweet Inspirations were hired to be the backup singing group for Elvis. This was during his return to live engagements for his residency in Vegas. Fans who discovered Van Morrison from his performances with them were already aware of his amazing vocal power. But to the masses, Brown Eyed Girl unveiled an incredible new vocalist to get excited about. Morrison's vocal on Brown Eyed Girl was an exhibition, a soulful explosion. When the microphone was turned on in the studio, Van went from being a shy, withdrawn 21-year-old to just a wild man. Cissy Houston from Sweet Inspirations attested to Van's transformation.
Laughing and running, hey, hey.
She said that once the engineer rolled the tape in the studio, Van was a live wire. He was full of ideas and improvisations that made every take sound like a totally different song. Cissy added that when Van was scatting in the song's fade out, he was like a madman with his eyes closed and wringing with sweat. It's been reported that the final version of Van's lead vocal on Brown Eyed Girl, the one that made the record, was actually his 22nd take. Brown Eyed Girl was released as a single in the summer of '67, and it was part of many misunderstandings that the singer had with Burns and really the Bang label. Van didn't know that Burns' plan was to release a bunch of pop singles from the 8-song record that they were working on. But given the confines of the one-sided contract he signed, he couldn't do anything about it. Oh, it just had to be so frustrating. To raise the hairs of Van Morrison's anger even more was the psychedelic design of the Blowing Your Mind album cover that featured Brown Eyed Girl. I mean, after all, it was the summer of love, and the free spirit of psychedelia ruled pop culture. But Van Morrison wanted no part of the hippie moment. When he saw the cover art for Blowing Your Mind, he was mortified. Yet once again, he had no power to overturn it. He couldn't do anything. Brown Eyed Girl was a smash hit, rising to number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song, with its irresistible melody and infectious sing-along chorus, it had such an enduring power that it became one of the most played songs of the 60s. And it sold more than 2 million copies around the world at that time. Sadly, Van couldn't share in the wealth for the writing or the recording of Brown Eyed Girl. He was so broke when the single began to build momentum, he had to beg the label for even a few $100s just to survive. For virtually any other artist, having a platinum hit as his first single would have been a dream come true. But Van Morrison detested the song's success. When asked about the song's incredible longevity, Van denied the opportunity to praise its composition. He stated there are at least 300 songs that he has written that are better than Brown Eyed Girl. When you look back at old footage of Van promoting Brown Eyed Girl, on TV appearances and such, you can honestly see how disgusted he was to sing this. One of those video clips where, Van's feelings are really obvious is when he had to lip sync it on American Bandstand. Check out a few seconds of this clip and see for yourself. Surrounding the timeless popularity of Brown Eyed Girl is the mystery of whom the song was really written about. Who was Van's unforgettable Brown Eyed Girl? Perhaps as another example of his disdain for the song, Van has never divulged who he wrote this song about. Now, anyone that has worked with Van Morrison knows that he loves writing nostalgic lyrics. He's amazing at it. When he was inspired to pen Brown Eyed Girl, he may have been reminiscing about an interracial fling in his youth. Making love in the green grass behind the stadium, as the lyrics go.
Making love in the green grass behind the stadium.
By the way, many gatekeepers thought that specific line was immoral, so it forced the label to make a radio edit that replaced the lyric in question to a repeat of the laughing and a running hey hey from the previous verse.
Laughing and a running hey hey behind the stadium.
Thankfully, all these radio stations reverted back to the original. They play the unedited version now.
Making love in the green grass behind the stadium.
Van may well have been writing about Janet Rigsby, actually, the woman that Van met in '67 and married in '68, partially to save him from being deported from America after he moved from Ireland to New York City at that time. On Van's brilliant second album, Astral Weeks, that followed Blowing Your Mind, Janet Planet, as Van affectionately called her, was his muse on several cuts, Ballerina, Beside You, and The Way Lovers Do. And the most compelling evidence to consider on whether she is really the subject of Van's sentimental story, Janet is a brown-eyed girl.
You, my brown-eyed girl.
With Brown Eyed Girl becoming such an international sensation, Van Morrison had leverage to take back control of his career. So on December 30th, 1967, Burt Burns, who had a damaged heart from contracting rheumatic fever, this happened when he was a child, he died of cardiac arrest at his New York City apartment. He was only 38 years old. Van, he tenaciously fought the agreement that he made with Burns and Bang Records. The negotiations to win back his freedom, it got really dark and really ugly. Burns allegedly had ties to the mob, and known mobster Carmine DeNoia was in charge of handling Van's contract with Bang. Rumor has it that DeNoia and Morrison got into a full-on brawl that ended when Van smashed a guitar over the gangster's skull. The incident apparently fueled Van's growing paranoia of being deported. Sound like an episode from The Sopranos here? Another episode or piece of Carmine DeNoia gossip is that he once threw singer Tiny Tim off a boat because he didn't like the way he looked. The lawsuit between Morrison and the label raged on for years, but in the heat of it, Van was able to get a new deal with Warner Brothers. With his new label intact, Van refocused the vision for his solo career, and he made the kind of album that he always wanted to make with the release of Astral Weeks in '68, one of the greatest albums ever, succeeded by Moondance in '70, an LP that many call Van's seminal record.
Well, it's a marvelous night for a moon dance with the stars.
Van and Janet Planet divorced in '73, but they had a daughter together, Shanna Morrison. She's also a singer-songwriter like her father.
Sometimes we cry.
In 2009, the song was awarded a millionaire certificate at the BMI London Awards dinner. The certificate is given in recognition of songs by European artists that have garnered multi-millions of plays on US and radio and TV. Brown Eyed Girl topped the list in 2009 with an incredible 9 million performances achieved since its release back in '67. The song has also made its mark all over pop culture. Placed in a lot of different movies like Sleeping with the Enemy, The Simpsons movie, and A Knight's Tale, and used for national TV advertising campaigns like Dodge Ram trucks and Miller Lite.
Tuesday, it's so slow.
Parrotheads loved the version that Jimmy Buffett made in '83.
Brown-eyed girl.
Of course, Bruce Springsteen, Everclear, Caroline Jones, Real Big Fish, and many others have reimagined the song all over pop culture. Not have time to list all of them. Also, El Chicano remade Brown Eyed Girl and released it as a single in 1972. That one peaked at number 45 on the Hot 100. Yeah, Brown Eyed Girl is a song that gets our hearts a-thumping. May have been created during a very challenging, disparaging time for Van Morrison, but it's truly a classic of the rock era, whether he likes it or not. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Let us know your memories of this all-time classic hit. I remember hearing this song. It takes me back to summers, riding around with my dad in his pickup. This was a song that he told me the story of. He had his own story that he was in love with a brown-eyed girl. I think he actually married her. Anyway, tell us your memories below. And if you like our content, we would love to have you as part of our channel. Subscribe below. Until next time, 3 chords and the tree, my friends.